the game and convince everybody else that even if you don't believe what your culture is saying, you better keep quiet about it or they will kill you. And so you end up with children growing up in a society in which everybody believes, or at least openly believes, or at least says they believe.
It always seems like religions get people when they're on their down and out. You know, somebody who has issues or has problems seem to really cling to religion.
And the reverse, strangely enough, does not seem to be true. Now you always end up with somebody that says, you know, well, I was a former heroin addict and everything, and then I found Jesus. And one of the ironies there is that you can get the exact same story of changed lives from any number of unrelated religions. You know, you can get it from Christianity, you can get it from Islam, you can get it from Hinduism, you can get it from the neo-pagans. I read an article by this woman that from Thailand who went on about how much her life had changed and the feeling of enveloping rapture when she finally accepted Buddha to her life. So, I mean, change the name, and the effect is the same. And you know, George Harrison of the Beatles, you know, he used to talk about this relationship that he had with Krishna, this personal relationship. You know, he'd chant the mantras and he would focus on Krishna. And Bhakti Hinduism, by the way, is you know, most of Hinduism is distinctly different from anything the West experienced, except the Bhakti, the ISKCON, the Krishnas. They have some strong parallels with fundamentalist Christians, and they have a very strong adherence to faith in the same sort of deceptive manner that Western theology has. And the way they argue for apologetics. Now, as again, this does not describe everybody, but I have had debates with, or not debates, but, you know, I've had discussions online and such with some of the more dogmatic bhakti, and some of them have even described themselves as being like the fundamentalists in the way that they adhere to their beliefs and the way that they see their gods and experience their gods. If you want to believe something hard enough, you can make yourself believe it, and that includes being able to make yourself see it, hear it, feel it, change your life.
I hear all the time from religious people that science makes up its data and that it's all fake.
Yeah, well, I went to a creationism seminar not too long ago. This guy was talking about how every fossil hominid ever found was a fraud, and I challenged him to name one evolutionary scientist who had ever lied in the act of promoting evolution over supernatural creationism, and there just isn't. There's not one. Now there are a couple of examples of, let's say, one guy who bought a fossil that was forged, and every scientist that saw it said that it wasn't legitimate, but he had already invested $80,000 in it, and you know the Smithsonian Magazine had bought it, so he didn't tell them that the scientists all said, you know, this is a fake. You have another guy. You have another guy, the Nebraska man thing. He said he found a tooth, and he thought that it was badly worn and everything, but he thought it was like an ape's tooth, and so they built this Nebraska man out of it because he thought it was the tooth of a hominid. None of the scientific community accepted that either. They said that's not a human tooth. You need more evidence before you can make a claim like that. He spent 5 years looking and eventually gave up and said, you know what, you were right. I couldn't find any more evidence, so I have to concede it's not human. This is not a fraud. This is one man saying, I think this is human. Everybody else says, no, it isn't. You don't have enough evidence. He goes back, he comes back, he gives up. All right? So you have one time, one fraud that was ever clever enough to fool scientists. Nobody knows who perpetrated it, but we know who the victims were. It was the scientific community. And we know who found it out and exposed it, and that was the scientific community. The creationists have no idea how to expose a fraud. If they did, they wouldn't be following the leaders that they have.
Harvard's done a study that states that prayer does not work. It looks like the creationists are kind of up a creek.
Oh, yeah, here in Texas, you can't say that because our governor is massing a huge prayer rally, you know, to try to get out of the, you know, of letting everybody realize that we hired somebody that can't do anything. He's decided to make everybody cower, self-blinded, and wish that there was an answer because he can't think of one. Because that's essentially what it is. You know, you're kneeling down in a cowering position. You're going to close your eyes, and then wish. Again, if you are convinced that you can believe hard enough and that will change reality, then yes, it's very delusional and it's self-fulfilling in that way. I mean, I saw an interview with Will Smith where he was talking about that very psychology and how he has it, where he is convinced that he can bend reality by sheer will, and that in he says two plus two equals four only if you want to accept that two plus two equals four, and that he would have two plus two equal whatever the hell he wants it to, because he has that kind of a will. Now, think about this. And what's really disturbing is that some of these people are really nice. I mean, I like Will Smith. I've never liked him in an interview or when he wasn't playing a character. I've liked every character he ever played. But this detachment from reality, when you propose, now it's one thing to say, I believe something, but when you state it as fact without the prequel of I believe, when you say this is, you say that there's leprechauns living under your bed, whatever. If you don't have any basis for that, you can't state it as a fact. But that's what religion does. It states as fact that which is not evidently true. And then you have apologetics, which will rationalize and make up excuses to keep from admitting that you're wrong, which in another sense, religion means never having to admit when you're wrong. So you have a 100% failure rate. And I mean across the board. Remember we were talking about all failures in science? That religion fails in every aspect of science? Look at all the religious communities in the U.S., and they're all family-based. They all say that they are based on the family. And if you look at statistically, they're horrible. I mean, the highest rates of teen pregnancy are associated with religion. The highest rates of child abuse, child neglect, child homicide, child molestation, all correlated to religion. And in some studies, it showed that the more religious you are, the more likely it was that you were going to molest children. And we're not just talking about Catholic priests here. We're talking about, just in general population. The statistics for criminality in prison, for divorce rates, evangelicals have a higher divorce rate than secular people. I mean, every statistic negatively reflects on religion. Yes, good men will do good things whether they're religious or not. For a good man to do evil things requires religion, and religion does not seem to make evil men do good things. When you begin to make sense, and you have got somebody cornered, now it's difficult to do on the internet. I have actually seen, when I start making sense, where I am clearly going to win this conversation in the next post, whoever it is that I'm discussing this with on the web has anonymity that he can escape with. He can close his account. I've seen blogs shut down, the whole forum, take it offline. Or the person disappears and comes back with some alternate name or something like that, or they just disappear altogether. But if you can get somebody cornered and hold them accountable, and remember now, creationists do not have accountability. They will never admit when they're wrong because they can't. So when you force them into a situation where they cannot account for something and they cannot defend something and they have to concede an error, and where you will not let them not concede the error and they can't defend it either, because their position forbids them to admit a mistake, and they can't defend it and they can't correct it and they can't escape, what ends up happening is that they turn into children. Children in an emotionally base state. It's a psychotic episode. The use of religion drives by paranoia and prejudice propaganda. It's almost entirely negative. It's fear-based.
I hear the placebo argument all the time that it makes them feel good
You
to have faith.
feel good smoking cigarettes too. You will lose weight smoking cigarettes. You'll look cool smoking cigarettes. You'll get more attractive to the opposite sex smoking cigarettes. It all depends on this, the way that the culture views it. And sure, they can talk about changed lives again, but ultimately it's no good for you. Accurate information has practical application, and beliefs don't. Faith fails. Prayer is useless. Prayer does not work. The level of error is so bad on the religious perspective that The most amazing thing to me about these people is how anybody can be so consistently proven to be absolutely wrong about absolutely everything 100% of the time for such a long time and still declare theirs as the absolute truth.
Thank you very much for taking the time to have a conversation with me. You can reach AronRa at YouTube/ARONRA. AronRa.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.